Kavita Sharma and friends. If I start taking names, more than half will be covered. There are too many distinguished people here, so I will not waste your time on that. I stand before you with some amount of trepidation because the topic is of human rights and you are all experts on that, and I'm a mere sociologist. So what could I say to you? Very little. But if you have seen the program, which is distributed, I ought to have started speaking to you at 11 o'clock and should have concluded at 11:20. Thus viewed, my speech has gone into history. And here is an effort to revive it. I will try to be as brief as possible. I think Mr. Ahmed already reminded us, this year is the 800th year of Magna Carta, which is usually conceived as the harbinger of fundamental rights and liberties. And I hope, as students of law, you will know that King John at Runnymede was believed to have signed the document in 1215 AD. There is some controversy surrounding it. This is available in a book by D.A. Carpenter, The Reign of Henry III, published in 1996. But that should not detain us here. The point I want to make is King John did not sign the document on his own volition, but he was forced to sign. There was a violation there of human rights in the sense that he was forced to sign the charter by the revolting barons, which is to say that Magna Carta, viewed in that sense, is not a product of a democratic process. It happened because of coercion. Thus conceived the rights discourse as a democratic process or a people's project started only in the 17th century. And I will try to give you a very, very brief history, capsule of the evolution of rights before we really come to human rights. The first right to be enunciated and put into practice was the civil rights, as you all know. That happened in the 17th century. And civil rights essentially meant liberty of persons, freedom of speech, thought and faith, the right to own property, the right to conclude valid contracts, and the right to justice. But as is very evident, civil rights were not universal in that for the poor, some of these were irrelevant. If I am poor, how can civil rights be very relevant to me? It's not. It was a pro-rich, if you want to use the popular term, a pro-bourgeois set of rights, civil rights. Later it has been brought into the universal context and application. Then came the political rights, which emerged in the 18th century, and that was the right of franchise, access to public office. There was a time that some people, because of their birth in some categories, could not ever occupy public office and, of course, cast their votes. However, even this political rights in the beginning was not a universal right in the sense that only the male, in fact the tax-paying male, could have the right to vote. So the vast majority of human beings could not enjoy political rights, which we all take for granted today, that the right to vote. Then came economic rights, and that emerged in the 19th century, by which time capitalism became a world phenomenon. And the socialist demand for the welfare of the poor start emerging. And I believe that the institution of welfare state which emerged in capitalist democracies was partly to counter the socialist regime. And therefore, a set of rights have been given mainly for the poor, the labor, those who are below the poverty line, as we say these days. Now, the 20th century actually saw the consolidation of the rights in Europe, civil, political, and economic. And these rights became common, gradually spread to the rest of the world. I want to make 3 points, very short points at this juncture. One, the first 2 rights, civil and political rights, were individual rights. And the third is a group right, that of the lower class. And mainly, this was given based on the material standing of these people, the lower class people. And these rights emerged, and the second point is, these rights emerged and crystallized in the nation states where political and cultural boundaries were coterminous. So, the European nation states invariably have a situation where political and cultural boundaries are coterminous. And thirdly, in the case of individual rights, the state is expected to interfere, be it in the freedom, is not expected to interfere, be it in the freedom of speech or worship, production and exchange of goods, voluntary association of the people, etc. In contrast, and that is the significant point, the third right is one in which the state has to interfere. Suppose I want to give a scholarship in this university, and if that happens to be a merit cum means scholarship, we will ask the president of the university, through the appropriate agency, will ask, please produce your income certificate. That income certificate is an indication of making that which is private a public thing. No, if I am a rich person and not asking for scholarship, you won't ask me to produce a certificate. But the administering agency, authority, should have some proof that their decision is correct, and therefore they will ask for a certification. The point, therefore, is these rights are not on the same level. It has their own specificities. The first 2 I said are individual, and the third is collective rights. Now, insofar as there was coterminality between cultural and political boundaries, things were manageable. But then emerged what is called a third world. I'm trying to give you my interpretation of the need for human rights. When the third world emerged, there was no nation state there. Look at the United States of America, Australia, New Zealand, which actually constituted the New World. In the New World, there were no nations, as we understand in Europe. What we have had was a groups of people coming from different parts of the world. And there were the indigenous people who were referred to as red Americans or natives. And then there were people who came as colonizers, the whites, and then the blacks who were brought in as slaves, and then later the yellows and the browns, I mean the Chinese and the South Asian people who came there. So we had a collage of people. We didn't have nations there. So how do we deal with this situation? And therefore, the need for human rights arose. My argument is 2 conceptual innovations were necessitated in the new world as against the old world being the world of nation states or national states. Which are these conceptual innovations? One, the idea of multicultural or multiracial societies. And that was required because of deterritorialization of race, religion, and language. Before that also there was deterritorialization, but the turbulence of migration, as we understand it today, did not arise. And if you know a little bit of statistics, you will find a large number of Europeans have been deterritorialized because of the emergence of colonialism and the rest. So, in the nation states of Europe, citizenship was granted on the basis of membership of the nation. There are three different varieties. I don't have the time and you don't have the patience, therefore I will not go into it. There are three ideal type citizenship nationality relationship. I will not touch on that. In the New World, as I said a moment ago, there were no nation states, but only multiracial and multicultural states. And the idea of multicultural citizenship emerged for the first time in Canada, as you will all know, and not in the United States of America. And the second conceptual innovation was that nation states emerged through a process of national self-determination. Now, you cannot have national self-determination if there are no nations. So, which would be the national entity in the United States of America, for example? There were, if you go to the United States, and I'm sure most of you might have gone there, you are always a hyphenated person. You are an Irish American, an Asian American, an African American. But we are not like that in India. I don't say that I'm a Kerala Indian. I'm an Indian, full stop. So look at your linguistic background, or as I call it, national background. It's quite different. So in the United States of America, you have a situation where this hyphenation came in. And then, more importantly, the American Indians, or the Australian tribals or aborigines, or even the natives of Latin America, were completely marginalized. If I say so, if I take an example from our own situation, it would be like our Adivasis, and many people will contest this. Therefore, at the moment, I will not go into it. Adivasis claim that they are the first settlers, but with 8% population, 80 million people, where they are in the firmament of Indian national state, you all know. So, national self-determination simply meant, in the case of America or in the New World, cutting the umbilical cord between the colonizing mother countries and their colonies. I think Lerner once said it is slaying the father. It's your own people who went there, and you are asking for American War of Independence is what? Asking the Queen to concede freedom, or Australia, wherever it is. So, there was no nation in the New World to which citizenship rights could be lashed on. Thus arose the idea of human rights, which is an entitlement to all residents in the territory of a state. You need not be a national. If you are a German, well, you are a German national automatically. Because of that, you become a German citizen. But if you know the situation, if you are a Turk, and if you are there for umpteen number of years, for generations they are there is no hope of becoming a German citizen. But somebody who has migrated to, some Germans who have migrated to Peru, coming back after 170 years and say, I am a German, I have German blood, instantly you are a citizen. You see the problematic. No such situation existed in the case of the New World. So, this is very, very crucial. What was the rationale? What was the compelling reason for human rights to emerge? Is the question that you must examine, because as students or experts of human rights, you should know the prehistory of human rights. The Universal Declaration of Human Rights in 1948 by the United Nations should be studied, should be situated in this context. Citizenship rights are always formulated by nation states, national states, multinational states, that is states. But the Declaration of Human Rights have been formulated and of course declared, announced by supranational organizations, not by national organizations. Now, the two covenants, the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, reinforce the already existing individual rights. And secondly, the International Covenant of Economic, Social and Cultural Rights only reinforced the group rights based on economic condition of the poor, but also introduced the group rights based on social and cultural condition of groups. So I made the distinction between individual rights and group rights, and in a way you can see the same phenomenon enveloping human rights. One set of human rights are individual rights, another set of human rights are collective rights. Now, I will not go any further, but to say one more point, because let me say, when I was originally, this is a deviation, President Kavita Sharma, when my good friend Professor Tyagi invited me, he said, "We want to honor you." Who doesn't want to be honored? I accepted readily. Then he said, "You come and speak." Finally, when the program came, he said, "You come and chair." So I have a speech with me, but I don't have the time to deliver. Anyway, I'm in a contrary, as it were. I only want to conclude by saying that when all these rights are there, the rights are not coping with the developments that are taking place. Dr. Sharma referred to some of these, if you have followed her very carefully. Ensuring rights, making legislations are necessary but not sufficient. But now what I am trying to say is there is a huge deficit even in the very formulation of rights. You have referred to Vietnam, isn't it? That's a very interesting case. You know, the Vietnam War has provided a situation which led to what I call ecocide. Earlier we had two other sides. Of course, one side is genocide, all of you know. But I have coined a term to refer to certain kinds of violations which I call culturocide. Systematic destruction of cultures of minorities, weaker groups, etc. So I now argue very frequently that if you want to have a society in which human rights are really accomplished in all its manifestations, you should avoid three sides: CIDES, genocide, culturocide, and ecocide. But if you look at the corpus of rights that you have formulated, although occasionally people talk about environmental rights, I don't think there is any serious discussion as of now on ecological rights. So the two covenants encapsulates a set of rights which is either individual-based rights or group-anchored rights. But when you talk about the ecological right, of course all of us are involved, both as individuals and as groups. And I don't know whether there is much serious discussion about ecological rights as a human right. And since I am, as I confessed already, I am an illiterate in this area, and since you are all experts, I am only providing you an agenda to do research for some years to come. So unless in today's world, with reckless production and application of technology is taking place, the nature is destroyed, in spite of little economic development, the disparity that this development is bringing about. So the idea of ecological rights will have to be seen in the comprehensive context. To conclude, I refer to the native people. Again, it will be contested, I know, because India is no more happy with Aryan advent. It is now talking about the return of the Aryans. You all know all this. Now, ecological rights, a simple item called displacement because of development. We in this country are 8% Adivasis, according to the Indian census. But 60% of the people who are replaced, displaced, and not even properly rehabilitated because of the so-called development process are the Adivasis. So, total percentage, 8. Total displaces, 60. So, when I talk about ecological rights, certainly it's a very important thing to concentrate on Adivasis. And Adivasis also have their own rights. Long ago, our friend, whom you all know, Bakshi, wrote about the state legal system and also the religious legal systems. Once in a conversation, I told him, there is also the folk legal system, the people's law. You may not like it. It may have its own deficits, but you need to grapple with it. And that's why those kinds of laws. Similarly, you have to think very seriously about the importance of ecological rights in this time where we are all sold to the idea of reckless development and deployment of technology, which leads to a lot of problems. Thank you very much.